Colonel Philip Agure is the spokesperson for the South Sudan military. Now to other matters. According to the Hague-based court prosecutor, the International Criminal Court could investigate alleged crimes by the Islamic State militants in Libya, but it is first up to individual states to prosecute their citizens accused of offenses. The United Nations Security Council has asked the court in 2011 to investigate crimes committed since the start of an uprising. That's the same year that led to the fall of the leader at that time, Muammar Gaddafi. Libya has since descended into chaos, with two competing governments backed by militia brigades scrambling for control of the oil-producing country and creating havens for the Islamist militants and traffickers. The ICC prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, told the UN Security Council that she had noted the 15-member body's calls for accountability for alleged crimes against civilians committed by groups claiming allegiance to the Islamic State. Now, speaking of war crimes, according to yet another report from the United Nations, a Ugandan Islamist rebel group committed human rights abuses in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. And that was last year, that may amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. The Allied Democratic Forces killed at least 237 civilians in the last quarter of 2014, including 65 women and 35 children. Dozens of armed factions are active in Congo's chaotic east, continuing to fight for control over its vast reserves, and that's of gold, diamond, and tin, following a 1998 to 2003 war that killed millions and drew in more than half a dozen neighboring countries. The UN report also said that civilians in the Beni area, where the ADF attacks occurred, remain extremely vulnerable to violence, and that threat could spread to the Irumu region, also in the east of the vast Central African states. Now, I'm going to go back to that story on the ICC saying that it could investigate alleged crimes. Now, just a quick reminder, according to a Hague-based court prosecutor, that's Fatou Bensouda, the International Criminal Court can investigate alleged crimes by the Islamic State militants in Libya, but it is first up to the individual states to prosecute their citizens accused of offenses. For more on this, I'm now being joined via telephone by Mr. Charles Adeogun Phillips, who is a former war crimes prosecutor. Mr. Adeogun Phillips, thank you very much for joining us again on Network Africa.
Thank you for having me, Cynthia.
Now, I'd like to start by asking you how this process works, basically.
Well, there are three main ways of referring a case to the ICC. It's either that the prosecutor of the ICC decides to open an investigation in a dispute or an incident that has occurred in the territory of a state party, or the state party itself, in this case Libya, refers the matter to the ICC, or the third manner is that the Security Council of the United Nations refers the matter to the prosecutor for investigation. So there are three methods that a matter can be referred to the ICC.
Is this a lengthy process, though?
Not necessarily, but I think the sticking point there is to understand that the jurisdiction of the ICC is merely to complement that of a domestic jurisdiction. In other words, the ICC's jurisdiction is only triggered when a member state is unable or unwilling to carry out those investigations or prosecutions itself.
So what consequences might we be looking at in the event that this actually happens?
Well, if the prosecutor herself decides to open an investigation into the ISIS alleged atrocities in Libya, then basically she would send investigators into that territory, prepare a preliminary report, and it's only when she feels that there is sufficient evidence that she will then open what she calls a formal investigation. She needs to seek leave of the trial, the pre-trial chamber in the ICC. She needs to seek leave of the court to then open a formal investigation. And if there's a case to answer, if there's a prima facie case to answer, indictments will be drawn, and those indictments will be confirmed before the pre-trial chamber in the ICC. But it's a long shot yet. I mean, we're talking about a 6 or 7 month process, if not longer.
Well, Mr. Charles Adogun Phillips, we're very thankful for you explaining that to us. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Charles Adogun Phillips is a former war crimes prosecutor. He's been telling us more about the ICC possibly investigating alleged crimes committed by the Islamic State in Libya. Now we're going to go back to our top story because we'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Here's our question for the day. Just simple, what are your thoughts on the coup attempt which we've seen happen in the last few hours in Burundi? You could send us your feedback either via email or Twitter. The address and handle will appear on your screen in just a moment. There it is. You can send us your thoughts on the developments in Burundi. We'll be very happy to have your comments. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. It's been a pleasure as always. I'm Cynthia Are.